Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, excuse me, rolling down to item number 2, under Title 10 of the County Administrative Manual, beginning in fiscal year 24-25, to include special session board meetings in August of each year following the approval of the recommended budget and prior to the adopted budget. And then again, down to number 2, would also include language adding a section to Title 10 of the Administrative Manual to reflect annual budget workshops to be concluded in August as requested by the board and presented by the CAO.
I have a second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
I would love to have a discussion about this before we make a decision, if that's okay with the chair.
Absolutely.
I think it's best that we've taken a pretty firm stance in the past not to have this, and because there's been quite a bit of public comment over the last couple of years that our processes aren't transparent enough, they're not accountable enough, and now it appears that we're moving in a direction that potentially has a budget workshop that, at least in the past, I've felt very strongly that was a duplicative process. And for me, also eating up a lot of staff time in a process that gets us to a point in August where we could actually bring department heads in front of us during our hearings and ask these very type questions. So it's pretty much the same timeline, in my opinion, that we're already on, and we do have a mechanism in August that allows for those discussions to take place. I guess my concern with this right now is, under our current policies and procedures manual, we go through a process that essentially starts in April, where our department heads and our budget team that we have authorized to dive deep into coming in with a crystal ball type suggestion, the best they can, with a June presentation to us to approve our draft budget, which essentially starts us on the new fiscal year. In doing so, that's their best guess until our county audit controller could essentially look forward, hopefully in July at the latest, with the idea of really what revenue is left to come in and what expenses essentially are left to put towards last year's budget, which gives us a good idea how we're moving forward. I'm not sure there's a lot of input that could take place earlier from the board that would allow our department heads that have essentially, some of us have been here close to 30 years, to give us a better idea of what's going on to make a better decision. And then we have this weird time in July where we're waiting for all the numbers to come in order for us to make our best decisions. So that next step that would essentially take place in August, which is being suggested by item 14, is to have a more transparent process as these public hearings begin to roll out. I'm just wondering, again, like I've stated in the past, why this particular mechanism for the board is necessary when we do have a public hearing process and we can ask our department heads to come for us if there are concerns. So I'd like to hear from the board on that, especially after listening to a lot of the lengthy discussions from the June 26th meeting.
I actually have to agree with Supervisor Howard. This has been happening this way for many years. There's been, there's very little, I guess I'm looking at this that was just given to us, which is a survey of people wanting this to happen, which is great. And I know it's just a quick, it doesn't give a full footprint, but out of 27,000 people, only 36 people thought that this needed to be happening. So I'm kind of concerned about that as well. And so with the budget hearing process, I'm also curious, what's the difference? And what's the benefit of doing it this way?
So what I'd like to say is, have you ever watched the city present their budget or do their workshops? Have you ever tuned in when the city does that? No.
I've
So
actually participated in the past, long
Yeah.
before I was on this board.
thank you, Linda. Okay. So just because we get a budget and it has all these numbers in it and all these things, and the average citizen doesn't have the wherewithal to process all those, to analyze all those. An open budget hearing allows them to come in, allows us to be this full transparent process. And while our process right now is transparent, it doesn't inform. It just provides a bunch of numbers, and that none of us really understand it either. And I think that's a very fair statement. We need to be able to start opening up our books and having conversations with the public. They're our boss. These people are our bosses. And if we can't tell them, well, this is how we're spending our money, or if we can't get their input on how we want to spend their taxpayer dollars, we're not doing our jobs. We're not listening. Okay, well, if the public could just let me finish. The current system is completely legal. It's completely above board. But why is it that we can't be like 95% of the other counties in Del Norte County? Why we can't do what, as I was just at the national conference, with 95% of the nation does, has open meetings, has an ability for the public to come in department by department and say, here's our projects, here's what we were able to complete last year, here's what we didn't complete because we didn't have the staffing or the funding, to show exactly what it is that we need to be able to have done. Just giving us a packet and saying, here's our budget, that's not informing the public. And so I'm strongly in favor of the budget hearings. Would I like to see something in the spring? Absolutely. I'd like to be able to have the board sit down with the 5 of us, because as you know, we often can't sit down with the 5 of us unless it's a public meeting, to be able to kind of guide where this budget is going to go. But instead, what we do is we get it to us, the budget team gets all the information, they decide what they want to bring forward to us. We don't get the rejects. We don't get the stuff that doesn't make it through. We don't get the reclassifications that somebody brought forward and then decided, no, you know what, we want to change that. We don't get to see that. In order for us to make informed decisions, we should see it all. We should be part of the discussion. And we're simply not part of the discussion. So I'm a strong advocate for budget meetings. I'm a strong believer that we work for this public. And this is what I think we need to do in order to take a step in the right direction to regain public trust with what we're doing with their taxpayer dollars.
Endless. I'm Supervisor Stark. I'm glad you did make the statement specific to the transparency of the current process and the legality of it. It is on. The processes that we do have in place have functioned quite well for us over a number of years. And yes, we do work for the citizens of this community. That is absolutely 100% factual and true. But they've put us, as I've made in previous years' statements, they've elected us to have that authority to create budgets annually that we function by. And then we, through our policies and procedures, have granted the authority of forming a budget to our department heads and then also to our CAO and budget team to bring forward a package for us in June that we could make informed decisions on. I guess getting down, and I've said this in the past many times, getting down into the nuances or the weeds of how a department head would like to form that budget based on the amount of money that they believe they have in their purse for an operating year. I'm not necessarily sure that that's a good role for a board of supervisor like us to be involved in until we have all the information in front of us, which I believe we do by the end of July. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you've presented a good discussion for us to consider, and there's a lot of reasons that specific counties do that, and there's a lot of reasons that other counties don't. And a lot of it really comes down to Siskiyou, for instance, just over the hill.
What I'm asking is, what are the good reasons why counties do it?
It's a specifically a efficiency issue and staffing issue is what I heard is the most important reason. We're not fully staffed in a lot of these areas, so distracting from the amount of time our budget team or others put into these, what I think are well thought out processes leading up to our June adoption period of a draft fiscal year budget for the next operating period, I think are well thought out. And there's reasons that some of our department heads who've been in these positions for quite some period of time know more than us about these processes. So you don't think the department heads should know more than us?
We should be as informed. We're the ones that are making the decision. So absolutely, they're going to know more than us. But we absolutely, before making any decision, I'm not going to just say that I trust this person. I need to understand it. I need to know the pros and cons. I didn't mean to interrupt you, so I do apologize for that.
It's a fair discussion, and I'm glad we're having this discussion because I do believe that the department heads have gone through a process to get to this level, that if we do have question on why something didn't get implemented or happen, we have that August period of time in order to do so. And I don't think interjecting ourselves in those meetings prior to June 26th is helpful for this board until the department has a good idea of what their purse looks like and what they can spend money on and where the revenues are coming from. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I'm a little confused. So this is for August. So this is after they've gone through the recommended budget and before the final budget. It's for us to really take a deep dive into the departments. I want to know statistical stuff. And I can give you an example, the jail. How many bookings were in the jail? Do all of those bookings, and how many officers do we have for that? How many staff do they have to process that? I'd like that statistical information so that when we make decisions that about the staffing and about the various things, that we're making an informed decision and we're not simply just making based on numbers. I think there's a lot more to the budget than just numbers. And I think we have to look at statistics. How many roads were able to be paved last year? How many miles of roads? You know, how many grants did the grant person oversee and review? I mean, those are real important information that as a board who's approving this budget really needs to have that background information.
What part of that, you've made a lot of statements, and I want to make sure we stay in that realm. What part of that process can we not at any point in time as a board direct staff to bring us that information?
Without it being permanently in the administration manual, we're going to see what happened last year. And last year, the departments came in, some, not every single department, some just chose not to come in, and gave us just kind of this brief overview, right? But it wasn't permanent. It wasn't all departments. I think that we need to embed this into our practices. I think that this is fair to the public to watch a board of supervisors operate with a practice that informs the community.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if it's an information gap that we're being presented, which is clearly, I think, a lot of the reasons that you want to have these discussions on a more general level at separate meetings. If it's an information gap, there's nothing, I guess, at this time that prevents us from going to those department heads and pulling for that information.
And then in what mechanism do I then, because I will do that, I will meet with every single department head for a day between then and now. What mechanism do I have to inform the public? If there's not an open discussion, what mechanism do I have in order to be able to bring that forward to the public? I'll hold town hall meetings if that's what you're suggesting.
That is not what I'm suggesting. There's a lot of mechanisms. The most common one, which obviously you traditionally use, is to bring it back either in the board report or ask the chair to place an item on our schedule, which obviously happens quite frequently with some of the areas we want to focus. So I'm still not sure what changes, but at this point in time, we have two items to consider. One, which Supervisor Short and you have seconded, which works towards item 2, the OR piece, or item 1, which is to just take a 1-year snapshot at this and give it a trial run to see what it looks like. And I guess my last question, since I've taken a lot of airtime here, is for the CEO. In doing so, what is the anticipated workload on departments and the CEO's office to have this next step in August? Was that previously discussed in a meeting that I might have missed, or what do we anticipate?
And also, hang on, before you answer that, also, could you add into there your, what this meeting or hearing or workshop would look like? Like what would go on at this, so we have an understanding of that as well.
Okay, Supervisor Howard, you first. Honestly, I don't know. It would be a brand new process for all of us, so I don't know what the workload would be for us. We did something similar a couple years back with Supervisor Starkey and Supervisor Maston. I don't think it was a massive amount of work. Our budget's already developed by then, and so the printouts are available. If we get questions beforehand, it'd be even less work because it's more helpful, because then we're not just sitting here going back and forth answering questions we weren't prepared for. A lot of it takes time. As PJ mentioned, this is a very complicated process. The budget is extremely complicated, and there are very few people in my experience that actually understand a budget completely. So it's hard for me to say exactly how much time. It would be additional special sessions scheduled for the board, and we were planning on doing 4-hour sessions. So it's not an overload to the departments, not an overload to the board or staff, and do as many as we needed to in order to get through the general fund departments. Honestly, I honestly couldn't say specifically how much work that would be. For departments that have multiple departments or department heads, it's going to be a lot more work than somebody who has one department. And sorry. The way this changes the process is just as I stated, it's special session board meetings specific for budget workshops. Typically right now what we have under the government code, which Supervisor Starkey alluded to, is that the budget is available to the public prior to the opening of a public hearing, which is not to exceed 14 days. And during that time, any member of the public can review the entire budget, submit any questions they have, submit any suggestions that they have to the clerk of the board. That is the public hearing process we're currently under. This would actually be specific meetings held by the board for the public. That's how the process would change.
So would the process be, department heads would come in with a similar presentation as they did this last year, or would it be more of a one-on-one conversation? And then if there's no members of the public here, is it just us having a conversation with the department head? Is that what it is?
Yes, if you didn't get public participation, then it would be just you guys and the department head. And that's actually what item 3 is on the agenda, is for you guys to kind of give us some direction. As I stated, this is brand new to all of us, so what you would expect out of this budget process or the budget workshop process. What happened previously was there was a table set up here in front. Supervisor Starkey and Supervisor Maston sat up there. The department head came forward with their budget, and Supervisor Maston and Supervisor Starkey highlighted certain line items, asked certain questions. Was there anything operationally that you didn't get through the budget process? Things like that. So just kind of more of an open conversation. How detailed you want to get is up to you guys. It really is. So we're looking for direction on that also, if you approve item 1 or 2 today.
So just another comment for you, Mr. Lopez. During those 2 processes, the budget workshops that Supervisor Starkey and Masson did, and then after that, the budget presentations, I remember you making a comment to me that that the presentations were more burdensome, that most of the department heads favored the budget workshops. I know personally I do too, but that is true, that you kind of got that feeling from the department heads?
It is true that between the 2 of them, the presentations were much more burdensome, correct? I don't think, like I said, it's new to all of us. A lot of us have been here for so many years that the current process is so entrenched into us that we're just used to that. So it's hard to speak on how something new would happen or how it would proceed. But yes, definitely the presentations, I think, got a little off track from the budget. This is supposed to be budget focused, and a budget workshop would be more budget focused.
Thank you. I just had a couple more things, Mr. Chairman. Leaving a North Coast EMS JPA meeting with Rex Bone down in Humboldt County, he mentioned that, I got to get going. I got budget workshops to go to, and I asked him, you guys doing open budget workshops? And you'd have to know Rex, but he answered, "Oh hell yeah! How else are you going to get that transparency for the public?" And it was just really matter of fact from Rex, and it was just kind of struck me as that it really made a lot of sense. Another thing I wanted to mention is I value what Supervisor Starkey said, is that there is information, but then there's also knowledge to be gained from that. And I think Supervisor Borges and I gained some of that when we went and talked to our DA investigator. He showed us some past cases. And he asked us if we recalled, did you recall this or that happening? And we did. And he said, do you remember that not going to court? And yeah, there was kind of, some concern about that. And of course, the person that gets blamed is our DA, that darn DA, refused to prosecute this or that. It comes around now and again. Well, at that point, AC showed us the report that was given from the law enforcement agency that was the sole document that they were going to have to convict this person on. And it was, I'm not saying this to be, to come down on the sheriff's department or the police department, but it obviously showed that a rookie cop had done this report, and it was absolutely not up to par. So it didn't tell us a story about the DA. It told us a story about the sheriff's department or the police department, that we had some serious personnel problems there because we only have rookie cops working in those areas. So it was informative in that way to me, and I think that we could garner knowledge like that from these open budget hearings and asking these department heads how they are doing in their department, what their struggles are, not just how many pencils are you using, how many notepads are you using. We don't care about that. Getting into those kind of weeds is not what I'm envisioning here with these budget workshops. I'm hoping to learn something from the department heads about their department and learn what their struggles are and how we can be more informed and work with them better. So that's why I made the motion.
The only thing I'm not sure exactly where the heck that came from, because again, what we're talking about is budget and a budget workshop. And if we move forward on a budget workshop, it is just that, just budget. We're not talking about, finding out, the difficulties within, the lack of resources within a particular agency. What we are talking about is how they're spending their money and where their resources are going. As we're going forward in this issue, what we have, what we've just started this year with our strategic plan is no longer the tail wagging the dog. It's trying to get all of that information, and it came from the public, came from department heads, came from board members, putting together a strategic plan on what we wanted to see done and what our priorities were, so that when they go to actually the budget meetings that we are currently conducted, that is front and forward in their process, that they know what it is expected, that the board has directed them towards our priorities. And this is a brand new process. This is something that we are just in the process of starting. We have not ever had a strategic plan before. We've never, ever put our opinions before the budget was set. And so as we go forward, we have to be very cautious that we're not circumventing our own new processes that we're putting in place, that we have established this thing, and we need to allow those priorities established through the strategic plan to direct and give a roadmap for our department heads as they sit in those meetings and are prioritizing where our budget is going and what our priorities are. And this is the first year that we've ever done that. And yet, we're having discussions that are basically trying to bypass some of that process. I have no problem in having a public hearing and workshop discussing in August when it is actually going to mean something. If you discuss this in the spring or June, it's perfectly useless because we don't even know where we're going to be until we have that mid-year budget come out and we are heading towards our final. And this year we have to be extremely cautious because I'll guarantee you that the state is holding back exactly what they're going to really do to us because they don't want to hear the complaints, the yelling, and the shouting until the last minute. And so we're likely to find exactly where they're going to cut for their shortfalls at the last minute before the budget actually gets settled in Sacramento, and that's going to impact us directly. And so as we have those kinds of meetings in August, they're more relevant. We have an understanding what our cost savings was from the previous year. We have an idea of what capital projects, improvements, and other dollars may be coming and where our shortfalls are. We have that better understanding in August. And so it is a much more appropriate time for us to conduct those types of sessions. I'm not into really moving forward and changing title and doing all this stuff, making it a permanent situation, especially when if we do this, this is going to be the first building block. And so we may need to change these time frames. We may need to find it's not appropriate in August, may need to be later, maybe to be earlier. And so to codify it now, I think is not wise. I think it's something that we need to look at and see how it's best fleshed out before we, make it a permanent decision as to what we're going to do. I think absolutely public hearings or public workshops on the budget is a good decision. It allows the public to come in, even though they have other opportunities. Every time we have a budget, they have that opportunity to come and speak, and they have, and they've voiced their questions to us about the budget. So the opportunities are there. Whether they make themselves available of them, that's a different question altogether. And so, I'm not in favor of permanently addressing this. I am in favor of having such a session and directing the staff to put together a recommendation on how this August meeting would be conducted and in what fashion it would be made, whether it's a full board, whether it's two members of the board. I think the interaction and listening and hearing from the public and answering their questions, which largely is what happens. They ask questions about how we're spending our money and why it's addressed in this particular manner inside our budgets. And so having those opportunities to answer those questions, I think is not an unwise decision, although, again, how that is going to be framed out and which is the best vehicle to do that forward, I think that's something that, needs to be, we've tried several different methods of bringing forward our department heads at various meetings so that they could, and I think for the most part, for them, it was a waste of time. As I know, for me, if I have questions of our department heads, if I have any questions about their budget, I just go see them. I answer those questions. I get those resolved well beforehand so that I know what and why it's being done the way it is. And that's why I was elected. I was elected by the public so I could go and do these things and answer these questions and have these concerns and address them. And if I don't have the answers, then if it doesn't resolve, then I voice my objection here on the dais. Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, so I could clarify some of your thought process here. I believe what I heard, and can you please confirm that, are you advocating then for item 1? So just a preliminary look at this, just a tiptoeing into this for just this fiscal year, or are you not supporting either item 1 or 2? I guess that's this clarity I'm seeking right now.
I would be supportive of item 1. How and in what methodology, again, that it's done, whether it's a workshop with the full board or whether it's a workshop with just 2 members of the board and the public, like the ones that were done by Sue and Maston and Valerie Starkey this last time, or whether it is something totally different. But I think, having those brought back for the board, making a recommendation on how that would be done in August. Again, we've tried several methods. Some of them I don't think worked well. They didn't have the desired respect, or didn't have the desired outcome that I was hoping for. But these focus strictly on the budget, may have the outcome that the public is requesting from us at this time.
Okay, I guess if either item 1 or item 2 is currently motioned by Supervisor Short and seconded by Supervisor Starkey, whether or not item 1 or 2 move forward today or none of them move forward, results in potentially us giving guidance to the CAO and others in item 3 on what that might look like. So I think, me personally, I think we've beat this up enough. Whether or not we move forward with item 1 or 2, I guess is where we stand right now before we even get to item 3. So
I do want to clarify.
There's a second motion on the floor at this point in time.
I do want to clarify something if I can real quick. Sorry for interrupting you, Supervisor Howard. Both of these items are special session board meetings with the full board that fall under the Brown Act. It's not a ad hoc or committee or 2x2 or anything like that. It's full board.
Public comment? One more?
I just want to say first to see, because the board now is giving direction to all the department managers and the administration about what they want. And that's the critical part to starting doing a budget. That's what you need, the goals and visions and policies and all of those things that came out in the strategic plan to even start a budget. So hooray for that. Second, I think that I'd accept item 1 to get us started. I think you'll find that the public would be involved and happy to come, and at least you'd get a vision of what it's like, and then we can go from there, and hopefully next year we'll can make a motion to do something permanent and maybe make some adjustments to whatever we do this year. But we really, the budget hearing doesn't work the way you operate it. If you want to do a budget hearing and then spend the 2 weeks between till the next budget hearing, at the end of the budget hearing, to actually have a budget hearing where you're having a workshop and people come and make comments, that's kind of late in the game, because then they would have to be making adjustments to the budget. August is a good time. It's given fiscal services, the auditor controller's office, time to get the pretty close to the year-end numbers, so that he's got that year to date, not just the budget, but the year to date, because I work on that, and then I project from there. But even still, having that year to date as close as we can gives everybody a better idea of what you're actually doing. You've got 2 years prior actual, you've got this year's actual. So August is a good time because he's been able to put that together. So I'm here to support a one-time shot, number 1, as a test for August, please. And thank you for the strategic plan. And you saw how well that worked. You had the public here, they made comments, they sent comments in, and that's exactly what would happen with a budget workshop. Thank you.
Thank you.
To bed. As much as I trust the process, I do agree that public clarity and being able for them to understand it as well as everyone else, I am agreeing with you guys. So but I would like to advocate, if we're going to make this decision to do the public hearings, let's just make it a permanent thing and do it from here. here on out, and then we'll perfect it as we go, so we don't have to keep discussing this.
Thank you. And dovetailing off of Kylie's concern, do you need me to modify my motion to just do 2 first? Do I need to do that?
No?
Or, okay, all right,
No, we're good. I was just confused.
okay.
So Supervisor Borges, can I ask a question? You're supporting item 2?
I'm supporting let's do these public hearings, workshops, whatever they're called in here anymore, and let's just put it in the manual. We'll do it every year. It'll just become a normal thing, and we'll perfect it as we go. And if we can make small adjustments along the way if need be, but we've spent so much time discussing this and the presentations, and let's just pinpoint this down to something that's useful to the public and move forward.
Thank you.
And I understand we want to get to the vote, and time's precious for everybody. And I guess I'm in a position, if we're going to have to decide between 1 or 2 at this point in time, is to really see how this process works out. There's a lot of nuances here that we just don't know yet because we haven't had these processes. I think it's prudent for us to consider potentially item 1 as a test run to see what our impacts are before we monument this in our policies and procedures. And that's just my initial thought. And hoping for potentially some reconsideration of this before we walk down this path permanently. We just don't know. But
We have a motion. Go ahead and poll the vote, please.
Supervisor Howard.
no.
Supervisor Starkey.
Yes.
Supervisor Short.
Yes.
Supervisor Borges.
Yes.
Chair Wilson.
No. Motion passed.